Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about how to create a lean canvas. This lecture is very closely related to the previous lecture that was basically explaining what lean canvas is. So if you follow the instruction and if you follow the content in a previous lecture, then you will not have any problem following what's going on here. So let's begin. This is what you saw last time. This is how lean canvas looks like. What we are going to do is we are going to number each of these blocks, and we are going to do it step by step and let you know how to fill this out. The first block, actually blocks that you need to fill out are problem section and a customer segment section. Now let's see. This is where you use empathy in design thinking. What you need to do is you need to empathize with your target customers. The reason for that is we are trying to discover their unarticulated needs. Unarticulated needs, they are basically the needs that customers have, but they don't really realize yet. We use a journey map and an empathy map and other empathy methods to empathize with the customers to figure out unarticulated needs, and that leads us to insights. When we have insights, we can actually find something about how to take care of the problem. So this is the empathy part, empathy stage in design thinking takes a big role in lean canvas. The thing is, when this lean canvas first came out, people didn't really care to use design thinking. If that is the case, then we try to implement our thoughts, founders, the developers, their thoughts into, okay, this is what customers need. That was not really the case. And if that assumption is broken, then we cannot really create a solution that customers or the market needs. That's why we started using design thinking in this stage. Okay, keep this in mind. We will use empathy in design thinking to figure out unarticulated needs of the customers, and then we go from there. We identify the customers, and we go with their unarticulated needs to figure out their needs, and we develop insights, and then we move on to the next section, solution and unique value proposition. We talked about this in a previous lecture. Now, when you do that, in this section, you just follow the steps in design thinking. What we did in design thinking is that we talked about unarticulated needs, and we come up with the insight, and we come up with point of view statement. With the point of view statement, we started suggesting solutions in an ideation stage. That's exactly what we are going to do. Based on the target customer's unarticulated needs, we suggest the solutions. And at the same time, we will create product backlog and user story, which we will talk about in Agile. The reason for that is we need to manage this project, or as Agile calls it, sprint, more effectively. And at the same time, we summarize a unique value proposition of the suggested solutions. Keep this in mind. We are not going to have tons and tons of solutions. We are going to talk about just one or two, three tops. If we talk about more solutions than that, it's very difficult to track. It's very difficult to come up with any type of meaningful solutions afterward. So we come up with a very high priority solutions, and we go from there. Now, when we were talking about unique value proposition, I said that it talks about why customers have to buy from you. When you are writing down unique value proposition, there have to be at least three factors that we need to think about. One is relevancy, two, benefit, and differentiation. Now think about this. Relevance basically means, is your solution, product or service, does it have anything to do with the problem that we talked about? Does it actually solve the problem? We may have the best product ever, but it may not have anything to do with actual problems that we studied with. Then it's not really a good product or solution. When you're writing down unique value proposition, your product or service actually has to solve suggested problems. That's relevancy. Now benefit. What kind of benefit do we really offer? Now when we do that, that is actually related to our actionable metrics, but if it is quantifiable, it'll be better. we can actually see what kind of benefit customers really get. And differentiating factor. So this product is really good. Okay, that's good. Why do they have to buy from you? If somebody else has about the same product, why wouldn't they go to that company and buy the same product instead of you? That's a differentiating factor. If you can say, all the other products have this, but we have this feature, this value that nobody else can copy, that is really good. That means you have a viable business model. That's what you are talking about, and that has to be included in unique value proposition. It would be the best if you can actually write down the whole thing in one sentence. But if you cannot do that, headline, subheadline, bullet points, that'll suffice. You don't have to try too hard to put everything in one sentence. Sometimes if you do that, you have a very long sentence and nobody can actually understand. If that happens, just categorize it. Headline, subheadline, bullet points, that actually works as well. Okay, then the next is unfair advantage. Unfair advantage, as we talked about last time, it's about you, not the product. And I wrote it down here. UVP states, unique value proposition states differentiating factors for your products and services. Unfair advantage states differentiating factors that your team or company has. Okay, I'll say this one more time so you won't forget. Unique value proposition is about your products and services. Unfair advantage, it is about you and your company. Now we are moving on to profit structure. Now let's try to recall what we talked about. In the early stages, startups usually make mistakes, as in overestimating revenue or underestimating the cost. If you don't do that, you're fine. We also talked about the pricing strategy and a revenue stream as well, but you just put that into account and you just put that into consideration and write down as detailed cost structure and revenue stream as possible, then we'll go from there. And when I was actually leading this process, a lot of startups asked me, okay, do they have to be like 100% accurate? Can you change it later? Yes. I'll say this at this point so you won't forget. The whole thing, this Lean Canvas, it will be updated, it will be modified, it will be enhanced every time you do something about it. Every time you hear something from your customer, every time you hear something from your stakeholder, we will update it. We will make it better. And cost structure and a revenue stream, they are not the exceptions. So you don't have to have 100% correct profit structure. You just need to be as detailed as possible so you can rule out the wrong assumptions later on. Now, what's next? Key metrics. We talked about this, pyramid metrics. If you remember this, yes, it is called pyramid metrics because it sounds like a pirate. Arr! Acquisition, activation, retention, revenue, referral. It has been written this way, but as you can see in my later lecture, I put referral in between retention and revenue. We will talk about the reasoning later, but now, when I talk about this, a lot of companies just put acquisition as a key metrics and they try to follow. You cannot really do that. You need to come up with the numbers or variables that you can actually follow that fits into the category of acquisition or activation. The reason for that is, this may work really well with app companies, web companies, like any type of internet companies, yes, maybe. But for some other companies, that may not really work. So how do we do that? We modify it. You just need to think about what it really means. Acquisition, as in people hear about it, people actually get to the store. Activation, as in they try it. Retention, as in they come back to the store. Referral means, you know what, I've been to that flag shop and wow, that's really good. You need to try that as well. That's referral. and they finally buy it, that becomes your revenue. If they keep coming back and buy more and more and more, that's really even better. So think about what your business model is and how you put your variables into the perspectives of this R. If you use this pyramid metrics wisely, you can track your performances very effectively. So metrics that measure the performance of the company's key metrics, it is very important to create actionable metrics. We will allocate an entire lecture for this actionable metrics, but this long sentence that you see here, you need to keep in mind just one thing. Pivots. They are characterized by maximizing learning. If you want to pivot, if you want to change your business model, if you want to tweak, if you want to tilt, then you need to learn something. So as much as you can learn from the customers, that's how you need to create this actionable metrics. Something that can actually be measured, that actually matters. One example is this. How many people come to my store? How many people revisit? If you are not thinking about the ratio of those numbers, then it doesn't really matter. But if you actually break it down to, okay, how many of the teenagers, the percentage of teenagers that actually come back to my store, that actually matters. That you can follow, that actually means something, that's measurable, and that's actionable metrics. So what is good actionable metrics for my company? You need to think. You need to talk with experts. You need to talk with others. And if it doesn't work, you need to revise it. One thing that you don't want to do is you are buried in this vanity metrics, the metrics that doesn't really matter and that you will waste your time on. As long as you can avoid it, you will be fine. Now, we come to the last one, channels. Communication channels with customers, not sales channels. We talked about this, and by now you would understand this. It is very, very important to learn from the customers, and therefore, these channels matter. Now, what kind of channels would you use? SNS, webinars, trade shows? I've been to many accelerating programs and a lot of companies that go, you know what, just sponsor me and you provide my company with some help so that I can participate in these trade shows. And I asked them, okay, trade show is really good. You can actually let people know about what you have, what you can do. What are the metrics? When you go there, when you talk with 200 companies, what are you trying to accomplish? Now, if you say, I've been doing this business for a long time, then every 100 company that I talk with, I sign a deal with at least 5 companies. Okay, fine. That's a goal. That's actionable metrics. If that actually happens, that is something you want to do. However, your target customer only exists on the internet. They only go through your website on the internet. They don't really come out. They don't really visit you physically. Then going to a trade show doesn't really mean anything. Then I have to ask you, did you choose the right channel? You may not be talking with the people that you want to talk with at this point. So all this blocks, target segment, target customers, problems, solution, unique value proposition, unfair advantage, profit structure, key metrics, channels. After this, I'm not sure if you need to talk about anything else. If you want to talk about, okay, do I have a right business model? Do I have a right metrics to measure my performance? When you can talk about all this, you can actually talk about, okay, now I'm ready to go out and check the viability of my business model. We believe we can do this. That's where we want to go. As soon as you can create it, then what's next? I talked about this in my another lecture when we were talking about solution. Solution does not exist in your office. Go out there, talk with the customers. Now you're gonna have to have something, hold something, which we call sometimes MVP, sometimes prototyping. Come up with something, build something that you can communicate with your customers with. When you do that, you learn, you build more, you make it better, you go out again, you learn more, you keep going from there. And sooner or later, you will have a revenue generating viable business model. Okay, that I understand, but at the same time, we are already making money. Do we really have to do this? Yes, whenever you are trying to improve your product or services. Or if you want to come up with a new product, you do the same thing. This is what you do, and this has to be a culture of your company. Now, at some point, I told you these methods that we use, design thinking, agile, growth hacking, they all have a common denominator. Remember that little circle thing? Measure, build, measure, learn? That's what we do in every other category. Every other methodology, they do exactly the same thing with different variables. And every time we do that, the center of that whole thing, we will use lean canvas and put other methodologies in it. Agile, sprint, backlog, user story. That will be all included in this one-page document so you can communicate with your stakeholders. Customers, investors, your partners, and your team members so you can make it better and better every day. That's what we are going to do, and this summarizes our lecture about the Lean Canvas. And from next time, we are going to talk about Agile and how to manage the project. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.